Chapter 349 A Wife That I've Raised Up Since Young. The expression that the Prince of Ice, Liu Yilin, was wearing was the pure definition of weird. Despite wearing a stiffened smile, he was having a dramatic monologue in his heart. Why would Yi Xinxia have such a weird brother? Not only was he acting rough to girls, he even said stuff like, "Brocon," or "Siscon," how lowly. If you have nothing else to say, please get out from my sight. Go wherever you should be going. Mo Fan pushed Xinxia's wheelchair and headed to the school's entrance. There was no chance Liu Yilin would let them go just like that. His instincts were warning him about how unreliable this person was. Xinxia was already a weak girl who had impaired movement. It would be a disaster if she were taken away by this strange man. Hence, Liu Yilin continued to wear a smile as he said, "Since you're Xinxia's friend, you are my friend, too. I believe you've just arrived here. Please, let me buy you a meal." "Dude, aren't you annoying? We're about to find someplace without people to share our love and do something that's not suitable for children. Can you please stop talking and step aside?" Mo Fan said impatiently. Xinxia blushed when she heard the words. What does he mean by sharing our love and do something that's not suitable for children? How embarrassing does that sound? Liu Yilin's face turned blue and white rapidly. This guy was indeed having bad thoughts against Xinxia. She was too kind and gentle. She wouldn't even dare reject him. No way, even if Xinxia weren't rejecting him, how could I just stand and watch her falling into the wolf's mouth? Liu Yilin decisively stepped forward and said with a stern face, "Friend, you're going too far with that. I've been looking after Xinxia for the past few months. I know how gentle she is. I will not let you abuse her personality and harass her as you wish. She might stay silent, but it doesn't mean I, Liu Yilin, will allow it." Xinxia was about to say something, as she did not agree with Liu Yilin. As a matter of fact, Xinxia had already made things clear to Liu Yilin, but this guy seemed to be just living in his own world. However, Mo Fan stopped her. He squinted and glanced at Liu Yilin, whose appearance and actions were hinting that he was a fairly well-behaved man. He asked with a smile, "Do you like her?" "What are you trying to say?" said Liu Yilin. "If so, I still think you're behaving reasonably. Otherwise, aren't you fucking caring too much about other people's business?" cursed Mo Fan. Liu Yilin did not like anyone cursing at him. He frowned and glanced at Xinxia. It's fine, he could use the chance to express his feelings. Otherwise, the woman he loved would be dragged away by this perverted wolf, staining the pure, naive woman he was fond of. So what if that's true? Liu Yilin said with a stern look. So what if it's true? I was already disappointed when those girls were picking on her. If you're a man, you should have kicked them straight away instead of wasting your time arguing with them. And now, you're telling me you like her. Mo Fan's smile had turned into a mocking grin. I was being considerate for Xinxia. Liu Yilin explained himself with a dark face. Consider my ass. Listen up, she's my sister, and my wife that I've raised up since young. She's mine, you understand? Stop bothering her shamelessly like a fly. I'll beat the crap out of you so that your mum won't even recognize you. Mo Fan snapped righteously. Mo Fan's current appearance perfectly suited the expected behavior of an imposing CEO that the girls always fantasized about. Xinxia had let Liu Yilin know that her heart was already occupied. However, when she heard Mo Fan referring to her as his wife that he had raised since young, she felt like digging herself a hole and hiding inside it. There were people passing by occasionally. Did he really have to say that out loud? Beat the crap out of me that my mum won't even recognize me? Liu Yilin's expression turned dark. He could no longer stick to his polite demeanor. I bet you should go and ask around, to see if anyone dares to disrespect me like that here in Zhejiang Institute. The situation immediately became a showdown between the two. Their auras collided, the energy of the ice element and lightning element soon lingered in the air nearby. The crowd quickly realized that the two were about to start a brawl. They immediately backed off and looked at them with a hint of gloating. Where did this kid come from? Is he really that blind to try and pick on the Prince of Ice? Said one of Liu Yilin's sidekicks. Take a look yourself, it's that guy in the black shirt. Liu Yilin has already warned him not to cross the line. However, that guy showed no respect at all. Even though the healer girl Xinxia was born with impaired movement, there are quite a few guys interested in her. However, either they did not dare to compete with the Prince of Ice, or they were taught a lesson behind the scenes. This guy is about to have a tough time, said a student who was relatively up to date with the news in the school. By the way, does anyone know who the guy is? I don't think he's from Zhejiang Institute? Surely not, otherwise, why would he even bother going against Lu Yilin? Look at him, still thinking that he's good. I bet he won't even know how he loses the fight later. Lu Yilin's sidekick burst into laughter. An unusual breeze swept the place. The fallen leaves drifted with the wind. The crowd was intrigued. They had surrounded the entire place, waiting for the two to start fighting. The school did set up rules, but how many magicians could actually control their hands? Xinxia, step aside. I'll teach this stupid jerk a lesson. My ice element is fairly powerful. I don't want to hurt you by accident, said Lu Yilin politely. Mo Fan did not purposely push Xinxia away. His eyes flickered with a bolt of purple-black lightning, an indication that he was accumulating his energy. I prefer to use lightning against people like you. Mo Fan stood beside Xinxia. The lightning element star pattern was drawn quickly under his feet. The process was finished in a silent, yet rapid manner. Damn it, having Xinxia by your side while fighting against me. You know that I won't cast any spell at you, said Lu Yilin with a stern look. It's not that complicated. Mo Fan smiled. As a matter of fact, it was unnecessary for the crowd to give them a big space for the duel. There was no need to have Xinxia move away from them to avoid being hurt by accident. Mo Fan could easily defeat an opponent like him with a single attack. Qinjun, Thunderbolt, Yaksha. Mo Fan was incredibly quick at casting an intermediate spell. He was already pointing his finger at the air when he was uttering the words, "It's not that complicated." A great flicker swept across the sky. It forked and struck down rapidly. The trees nearby were shattered into black pieces instantly by the lightning. Chapter 350 The Best Ride. Thick purple lightning bolts appeared out of nowhere from the clear sky, like a devil's claw. The Prince of Ice, Lu Yilin, could not even prepare himself. He never imagined that his opponent was able to cast an intermediate magic at twice his speed. He had only drawn half of the star pattern. Lu Yilin quickly activated his magic shield, knowing that the situation was not in his favor. The shield looked like an extended fin. Its surface was made of scales, each reflecting a unique color. The purple-black lightning bolt struck the shield heavily. To everyone's surprise, it was shattered into pieces instantly by the powerful bolt of lightning. Even though the equipment looked fairly sturdy, it was incredibly fragile when facing the lightning. Lu Yilin was slammed to the ground as soon as the shield was destroyed. Blue puffs of smoke rose from his body. Although his equipment managed to protect him from the lightning, his body could not withstand the momentum from the impact. He fell to the ground with his face down, the blood from his bleeding nose immediately smearing across the face he was proud of. Lu Yilin shivered. It felt like his bones were on the verge of collapsing when he tried to get up from the ground. The incredible pain made him clench his teeth. Meanwhile, the gloating crowd were gaping, their eyes wide. They could not believe the famous genius of their school was defeated by a single attack. Where did this monstrous kid come from? Crap, Lu Yilin has smashed himself into an iron plate. That's insane, he just defeated the famous Prince of Ice with a single spell. Being aware of the comments and weird gazes of the crowd, Lu Yilin totally lost his temper. However, when he glanced at the man in the black shirt, Lu Yilin did not dare to underestimate him again. The fact that he had acquired a spirit-grade soul seed and was able to master the second-tier storm cloud was enough to imply that he was no ordinary magician. Lu Yilin could not help but admit that he had picked the wrong fight, but he would not give up easily. Don't let me see you again. Otherwise, I'll beat the crap out of you every time I see you. Mo Fan stared down at Lu Yilin, who was still having trouble rising from the ground. Both his expression and tone were incredibly smug. Beat me up every time you see me? It was the first time Lu Yilin had heard someone say that to him. The fact was, his being persistent would make little difference. His strength was obviously not on the same level as his opponent. Mo Fan did not waste any time further with the idiot. He pushed Xinxia's wheelchair and left the place. They finally had some peace after leaving the crowd behind. Mo Fan glanced at Xinxia, who had been fairly quiet, and chuckled. Do you think I've gone too far, beating up your schoolmate like that? Xinxia shook her head and said, he is indeed too full of himself. Xinxia had no idea what to say about Lu Yilin. Despite acting like a gentleman around her, he would subconsciously display the pride in his heart with little details. She was not willing to get close to him, but he always assumed that she was hiding her favor, worried about being picked on by girls like Chen Yunqi. She had already told him that she was not interested in him, but he assumed that she was only feeling unworthy due to her natural defect. "Oh, so you don't like him either. I should have hit him with another spell. I hate idiots like him who think they are the white prince the most," said Mo Fan. Leaving the school, Mo Fan saw that Xinxia was still wearing her same old clothing, thus he decided to bring her shopping. Autumn had come, too. How could a girl not dress up properly in this poetic season? Besides, Mo Fan enjoyed seeing different impressions of her as she tried on different outfits. Mo Fan realized that many couples were hailing taxis at the school gate. Mo Fan was not in a rush. He queued up patiently for his turn. When his ride arrived, Mo Fan was about to push Xinxia toward it when someone quickly went up to the car and hopped into it with his girlfriend. "Hey, I've already waved my hand," said Mo Fan in an unpleasant tone. "Brother, I waved my hand at it, too. Too bad you didn't see it, just wait for the next one," said the young man with a baseball cap. The driver saw Mo Fan was with a girl in a wheelchair, and subconsciously wanted to avoid trouble. He pressed the horn, urging Mo Fan to make way. "See you, brother? Don't blame me. You should be driving yourself since your girlfriend is impaired," said the young man in a proud tone. "It does make some sense," Mo Fan nodded. Hailing a taxi was not really convenient. Why was he waiting here when he already had a great transportation tool? Mo Fan briefly closed his eyes. When they sprang open again, his pupils flickered with a lunar white glow. The nebula of the same color appeared in front of Mo Fan, forming a dimension gap connecting their world to another magical kingdom. "Owoo!" A howl stirred up a strong gust within an instant. The school gate was fairly crowded at this time of the day. They immediately turned around upon hearing the shocking noise. To everyone's surprise, a handsome blue wolf leapt out from the gap. Its hair drifted imposingly in the wind, granting it indescribable savagery and style. "Come, our ride is here." Mo Fan lifted Xinxia and placed her on the back of the swift star wolf. As Xinxia collected her thoughts, she realized that she was sitting on the back of a magnificent beast. She grabbed the fur of the swift star wolf in fright. Mo Fan folded up the wheelchair and carried it on his back. He leapt onto the swift star wolf's back, sitting behind Xinxia. He made use of the chance to hug her around the waist, while his nose was enjoying the pleasant scent of her hair. The crowd at the school gate burst into an uproar. Apart from those hailing taxis, even those who had driven their luxurious cars here to pick up their girlfriends were incomparable. This man had redefined the highest level of making a public display of affection. The guy who was feeling proud after taking the taxi away from Mo Fan was stunned. Even the driver was too scared to drive away. Holding Xinxia's tender body and riding the magnificent swift star wolf, Mo Fan had decided to show these guys his best ride, which consisted of a roaring jump start, an open-top view of 270 degrees, and a luxurious two-seater. Chapter 351 The Astounding Figure. The strong wind blew past as the beast sprinted along. Unlike in the wild, riding the swift star wolf as it sprinted in a developed city was a totally different experience. The tall buildings quickly swept past on the sides. The beast easily caught up to the running vehicles on the streets. Mo Fan also caught a glimpse of the terrified or jealous gazes of the pedestrians. At a time like this, did Mo Fan care if he had a summoned beast permit for Hangzhou City? As a matter of fact, every city had clearly stated that summoned beasts were not permitted to run freely on the streets, to avoid stirring unnecessary terror. The rule did not apply to magicians on duty, as they were given special permits to do so. Mo Fan could not care less about not having the permit, as he believed no one would dare to stop him. Besides, he was using the motorway, thus he would not bring any harm to the pedestrians. However, when approaching the central area, Mo Fan did not dare to swagger. He withdrew the swift star wolf and folded the wheelchair open before placing Xinxia on it. He could finally push Xinxia around as they went shopping. The weather was fine. The sun was shrouded behind the clouds. Occasionally, a soothing breeze would fondle their faces. It was definitely the perfect weather to go shopping. Mo Fan bought a hot drink for Xinxia. She held it with both her hands and took a small sip at times. Her eyes were scanning the shops nearby, the delicate display windows with dazzling items, and the things that she was fairly interested in. Due to her impaired movement, she rarely had a chance to go shopping in a busy district, nor would she have the chance to leap with joy after finding an ornament that she was extremely fond of. Xinxia had many friends, who were exceedingly kind to her. However, not just everyone would spend so much time hanging out with her at places like this. She seemed rather out of place among the walking pedestrians, the overhead bridges on the streets, and the escalators in the shopping malls. It was easier when Xinxia was going shopping with Mo Fan. Mo Fan would just carry her when there were stairs in the way. He was rather willing to do so, as it gave him the chance to take advantage of her at times. The guy would have a sense of achievement when he saw her blushing adorably. After choosing a garment, Mo Fan pushed Xinxia into the dressing room. "I can do it myself." Xinxia left Mo Fan outside and pulled the curtain. "It's fine, I wouldn't mind it," said Mo Fan with a shameless grin. For the past 2 years, they had both been busy at their respective schools. They did not meet often, thus it had been a while since he last checked on her puberty. He had not been fulfilling his role as a brother. Unlike the shameless Mo Fan, Xinxia still had principles she would abide by. No matter how hard Mo Fan tried, she was determined not to let him help her change. Xinxia did not have a problem standing up. Her straight yet thin legs were more attractive than most of the girls at her age. They were like a piece of art that had not received any damage. She never needed anyone's help to change her clothing, including changing into a dress. On a side note, Mo Fan definitely had no taste in choosing garments for a woman. He only saw a rather retro piece of clothing, and assumed that it fit Xinxia's personality in his imagination. As such, he immediately claimed that she would look good in it without even considering the price. It was a long-sleeved gown similar to the design of the garments during the Han Dynasty, with a silk ribbon acting as a belt. It was suitable for autumn. Instead of a piece of vintage that looked like it had traveled across time, it had a mix of the current trend, too. It did not stand out too much when Xinxia was wearing it. It felt natural, fresh and trendy, with a strong sense of Chinese culture. Mo Fan satisfyingly swiped his card, seeing Xinxia's fresh look. The full experience of going shopping surely included buying great food. Mo Fan soon arrived at a fairly tall restaurant with a spectacular view. He could act willfully, as he was rather rich now. Similar to most of the rich people, Mo Fan enjoyed going to luxurious restaurants with glass windows. He would choose a spot close to one, and enjoy the view of the modern city. He would order a glass of Coke, wine, and had an enjoyable time with a gorgeous beauty across the table. Ah, what a pleasant life. Mo Fan did live like a caveman before. He had experienced a tense atmosphere where a grave danger would possibly lunge at him at any second in the wild. As such, he was treating the chance to live a calm, sweet life preciously. Xinxia, who was feeling the moment in a similar manner, stared at Mo Fan's eyes as she grumbled, "Brother Mo Fan, can you please not leave the city again?" "Don't worry about me, it wasn't that dangerous," Mo Fan said with a grin. "Ningzhu has already told me." Xinxia twisted her lips. She knew Mo Fan would try to comfort her and stop her from worrying. Oh, Mo Fan rubbed his head awkwardly. Mu Ningzhu and Xinxia had always been close. Therefore, it went without saying that Mu Ningzhu would tell Xinxia the entire incident. Mo Fan suddenly realized that him trying to comfort Xinxia with a lie was a bad move. He had to be more cautious. He had to consider the possibility of his first and second wives colluding before lying to them. Mo Fan was not interested in continuing the topic. He glanced at the scenery outside, hoping to shift Xinxia's attention. It was a very tall building. Although there were a few tall structures nearby, they were unable to block the perfect view that the restaurant had. His gaze quickly skimmed through the buildings nearby, reflecting the colorful lights of the city, and saw the West Lake, which had been relatively calm for centuries, in the distance. For some reason, as he glanced at the reflection on the surface of the lake, Mo Fan's mind was occupied with the ugly giant lizards, possibly because he had been seeing too many swamps recently. Slightly to the left was a tall building that belonged to a bank. The building was polygon-shaped and had a pointy top. It had silver leads spread all across it, and was built mainly with refined glass. From Mo Fan's angle, he could see an outdoor swimming pool with a side glance. The swimming pool was obviously not open to the public. There were only a few girls in their bikinis there. Somewhere on his right stood a 5-starred international hotel. It was surely one of the tallest buildings nearby. It was famous in Hangzhou due to its spectacular view across the West Lake. From Mo Fan's angle, he could see the entire 5-starred luxurious hotel. "Strange, we just walked past there. What's that building?" Mo Fan finally found a potential topic to shift Xinxia's attention. He pointed at the tall black shadow between the skyscraper and the five-starred hotel. Xinxia turned her head around with a confused look. It doesn't have any light. Is it new? Asked Mo Fan. Xinxia shook her head. I passed by the area recently, but I don't recall seeing the building. After taking a closer look, Xinxia suddenly acted strangely. She turned around and said with a weird expression, Brother Mo Fan, I don't think it looks like a building. It doesn't look like a building? Mo Fan was startled. Mo Fan quickly took a closer look with his senses. He was shocked in the next second. Mo Fan's face gradually filled with disbelief, which soon turned into fear as he got a closer view of the shadow. In the end, he was overwhelmed with fear. The shadow that was standing in the busiest district in Hangzhou slowly turned around. It was as if it was turning around after being aware of someone looking at it. It was literally turning around. Chapter 352: The Terrified City, the Skyscraping Snake. The black shadow was definitely not there before. It was currently standing between the silver skyscraper and the luxurious five-starred hotel. It had its back against the restaurant that Mo Fan was at, and now it was turning around. It had a gigantic face, even though the majority of it was flat. Its two triangular-shaped eyes were glowing, like spotlights lighting a logo at the top of a skyscraper. Its flicker was not too bright, but it was eerily terrifying, as if it could penetrate deep into one's heart. Its head and neck were almost the same width. The neck was slightly bloated, like it was wearing a giant cowl. It was entirely black in color, but one could barely see the scales on its skin under the illumination of the neighboring tower. As for the rest, Mo Fan did not dare to look any further. It was staring right at him. As a matter of fact, it made more sense for it to be staring at the building instead of the people in the window due to its wide vision. However, Mo Fan somehow had a strong feeling that it was looking right at him. The stare made him feel extremely tiny and petty. It stood at the busiest district of the developed city like an emperor. Despite the countless people on the streets and the tall high-rises nearby, it was just standing there. It felt like it had been there for thousands of years instead of just appearing a few moments ago. In the air, a helicopter circled the black shadow and directed its spotlight at it. In the darkness, Mo Fan could finally get a clear look at its appearance. Snake. It was a snake. It had its body upright like a statue. If it did not turn its head around, most of the people would assume it to be a freshly constructed skyscraper. It was extremely huge. Mo Fan was confident that a beast like it could bring utter destruction to the city just by moving around. However, it did not move. It maintained its posture after turning its head around. The only clue that proved it was not a statue was the tongue poking out from its mouth. Heavens, what is that? Someone in the restaurant finally realized the astonishing sight and burst out screaming. Snake, it's a snake. A snake, it's really a snake. Help! The restaurant that was filled with a romantic atmosphere a moment ago burst into an uproar. Everyone's eyes were filled with extreme terror, yet they felt so lowly that the skyscraping snake could not spare a glance for them. The restaurant was filled with screams and cries. Even magicians like Mo Fan could feel their hair standing on end, let alone the ordinary people who had never seen a demon beast before. Even the razor-tailed drake had not given Mo Fan such great soul-trembling fear. Could anyone tell him what he was looking at? He was currently in Hangzhou. The modern city was built up over thousands of years by human civilization. Why would the skyscraping snake now right at its center come out of nowhere? Xinxia, behind me. Mo Fan bit his own tongue. Only that would help him to briefly overcome the fear that was filling his heart. Standing behind the transparent window, Mo Fan did not flee for his life like the rest of the crowd. He clearly knew that with a human's speed, it would be no different than just standing there waiting for their death facing the skyscraping snake. As Mo Fan sensed the skyscraping snake slowly reaching its head in his direction, Mo Fan subconsciously dragged Xinxia, whose mind had gone blank, behind him. The skyscraping snake was extending its body. Its face slowly leaned forward as if it had seen something interesting. It slowly approached the restaurant's window. Its lantern-sized eyes were parallel to the restaurant located on the 70th floor of the building. A pair of human eyes, despite being filled with boundless terror, had a strong determination to live in them. A pair of snake eyes, without any sign of anger or joy. It was rather impossible to tell what it was planning to do. Maybe it was just randomly casting its gaze at a spot, and somehow the pair just happened to be within its vision. It might be a mindless act from the skyscraping snake, but it posed a threat that the man who was trying to protect the woman behind him had never felt before. The dark clouds reflected the dazzling lights of the city. The closest layer to the clouds were the symbolic skyscrapers that stood like tall trees. They symbolized the modern and prosperous of the human race, but tonight, they were no longer the closest to the clouds. That was a legendary snake that was straightening its body. The astonishing view served as a heavy slap to human civilization. The humiliation and tininess before the gigantic beast had fully toppled the understanding of humanity, who realized that they were only frogs living at the bottom of the well. It was not moving, nor was it destroying anything, but it was already a great calamity to the place. The crowd that looked like dense black dots from a great height ran in all directions. Vehicles had blocked all the crossroads. Many were rushing out from their cars and fleeing on foot. A nightmare had just arrived, without any sign or any chance for humans to prepare themselves. A few minutes later, a few people with wings on their backs appeared. Magicians who were able to fly were highly respected among humans, as they were exceedingly powerful. However, they were like flies and mosquitoes circling around the skyscraping snake, not daring to move any closer. The good news was, the towering snake had shifted its gaze, as if something else had attracted its attention. It leaned sideways as its neck began to expand. It was as huge as a cloud. Its eyes found a focus. They fixed onto a white-shirted man with long hair flying toward it from the south. The man had long hair like a woman's, perfectly straight long hair. The man landed on the pointy tip of the skyscraper nearby. Below him was the swimming pool, where the girls from a wealthy background had already fainted, resulting in a rather intimate view. The long-haired man raised his head and stared into the eyes of the towering snake. Among the thousands of people nearby, his eyes, sharp like the eyes of eagles, were the only ones that were not filled with fear. Even though the seal on you was nothing, it doesn't give you the right to stir such a scene on the streets. The man yelled, as if he were talking to the skyscraping snake. The skyscraping snake completely ignored the man. It slowly raised its head, staring at the closest dark clouds, and hissed. Suddenly, a haze encapsulated the skyscraping snake's body. The haze was faint at the start, only partially shrouding the snake's astonishing size. It quickly became as dense as the dark clouds, fully hiding the skyscraping snake within.